All right, welcome to the next module of the systems course. And today we are going to talk about something fun. We are going to talk about raising money. We're going to talk about stewardship and leveraging those resources, financial resources, into doing ministry in your church. And this is one of the most common questions we get at Church Fuel is how can we talk about money in a healthy way? How do we have a healthy approach to money? How can we raise more money? Because deep down we know that money enables ministry. Money can enable a lot of things in the world, right? It can enable a lot of bad decisions. But in your church, money enables ministry. It means you can hire staff. It means you can have buildings. It means you can do programs. It means you can do outreach. It means you can plant churches. And so raising money is a fun thing to talk about. And there's a lot of information on this topic. And so what I'm going to try to do today is talk about a system that will help you have a church where the budget is fully funded. And so that you don't have to have crazy fundraisers. You don't have to get those bad text messages on Monday morning saying, the offering wasn't bad, we're going to have to cut some stuff this week. And so just kind of get us started, I want to share 3 core beliefs about stewardship. And I think it's only fair if you know where we're coming from, if we're going to talk about strategies and tactics, just some of our core beliefs, our biblical beliefs about stewardship. And these things are really important. And so the first is this, is that money, it's not a financial issue, it is a spiritual issue. Money is actually a spiritual issue. And in your church, you're going to address spiritual issues. And one of them is money. Jesus said in Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Our money, our bank account, and our heart are connected. And so if you want to know what's important to somebody, look at where they spend their money. If you want to move people's hearts, then ask them to get involved financially. And so money and heart, right? Financial and spiritual are connected. It is very difficult to separate those two things. Somebody can say, this is important, this is important, this is important. But this is where the phrase, put your money where your mouth is, comes from. Our treasure and our heart are connected. Jesus said so. And so in your church, don't relegate finances to some operational thing. It is a heart matter. It is a spiritual matter. When somebody decides to give, they're making a spiritual decision, not a financial decision, or not just a financial decision, but a spiritual decision. Core belief number 2 is, and we believe this all throughout all of our church field resources, this course, other courses, our membership program, everything, is that stewardship is discipleship. That we want to be good stewards as leaders, and part of leadership development is stewardship development, and it's all wrapped up in what we call discipleship. And so when we talk about helping people with their money, we are really helping them follow Jesus. We're not just helping them financially because money and our heart are connected. When people give generously, that is a step in the discipleship process. Intentional discipleship includes effective stewardship. If you want to help the people in your church follow Jesus with their lives, their whole lives, a holistic discipleship plan is going to have to involve money, because money is what grabs a hold of us. It's one of the 2 or 3 things that grab a hold of people and keeps them from living a life that Jesus wants them to live. And so if just like money is a spiritual issue, helping people with money, stewardship, is a discipleship endeavor. And then the third thing is this, raising money, it releases ministry. If you want to, you can raise money for all kinds of things. You can raise money to make your life easier. You can raise your money to hire staff. You can raise money for all kinds of reasons. But what we get excited about at Church Fuel is helping you raise money so that you can do ministry in your community. If you can see an increase in your budget, if your budget could increase, if you could reach a few more people and those people would start giving, it is good for your church, because it means your church, that fundraising stuff, it releases ministry out into your community. And so we have a 2 kind of prong approach, because we know most churches talk about money too much or too little. You know, I've been in both of those churches where it's all about money all the time, or it's never about money. And there is a balance, and that balance comes down to having a good plan in place for both raising money and then managing money. So there's 2 parts of a stewardship system. Your church needs to do a good job at both of these things, raising money and managing or stewarding that money. And so today we're going to talk about raising money. And I've got a 7-step plan, or a 7-step system, that these 7 things that you can kind of do, and I would do them in order to have a healthy financial situation. And so the first step is this, is decide it's important. Decide it's important, that you've got to embrace your role as the pastor, as leaders, as a leadership team, as a staff, however you're watching this training, is you collectively have got to decide, hey, we're not interested in meeting budget. That's not exciting, and we care about it, but that's not the goal. The goal is not to meet the budget. The goal is to increase the level of generosity in our church. We want our people to be more generous so our church can be more generous, and it's a circle that goes around and round and round. And so the first great financial decision you're going to make is deciding to focus on it. Somebody needs to own financial increase. Somebody needs to own healthy stewardship principles. Somebody's got nobody's just going to do it. And again, there's a very spiritual reason that we have to do this, is because money is a spiritual issue, not just a financial one, that our treasure and our heart are connected. And so stewardship is a part of discipleship, and giving is a part of stewardship. So as a church, a holistic church, where you say we are trying to help people follow Jesus, you've got to embrace the fact that money is a part of that. Money was important to Jesus. You look in the New Testament, read the words in red, and see how many times Jesus talked about money. See how many times the parables were really about money. See how many times the money and finances and giving and generosity are mentioned in the Bible. This was not a topic that Jesus avoided. This is not a topic that weirded out Jesus. Jesus didn't get the disciples together and say, we need to stop talking about money because people are going to get offended. Jesus talked and preached and told stories and talked about money. Money is a life issue, a heart issue, and so your church needs to decide it is important. Now, I'm not even just talking about giving. Giving is a part of it, but I'm talking about something bigger than that. Money is important to the people in your church. Money is important to people who want to live indoors. And your church needs money in order to do ministry. So our first great financial decision, the first part of this process, is all of us collectively deciding this is not just an issue for the accountants. This is not just something that's going to be talked in, behind the finance doors of the finance team. This is something that we're going to bring front and center because it is worth it. That giving is a part of the discipleship process, and stewardship is a part of the discipleship process. And for us, if we're going to be fearful of talking about money, that we're actually going to fail to lead our church, that failing to lead your church financially is an abdication of leadership. And this is a strong statement, I know. But I've known too many pastors that would want to avoid talking about money because they're fearful of going overboard and talking about it too much. And talking about it too much and in the wrong way and with guilt is wrong. But talking about it not at all and just pretending like it's not an issue is also wrong. And so I want you to lead your church financially because I want you to be a good leader. I want you to be a strong leader. I want your church to experience financial freedom. I want the people in your church to experience financial freedom. I want your church to not just meet budget, but exceed budget, not so you can get rich and have money and have a lot of money in the bank, but so that you can do the ministry that God's called you to do. Now, you've got to decide this is important. And then the second thing you've got to do is, because it's important, we're going to actually set some goals. I don't know anybody who decide things that are important and then don't orient things around those importance, right? If you decide marriage is important, you don't just say, hey, marriage is important. You get married, you go on dates, there's actions that come out of you deciding something's important. And so we can't decide it's important and that be the end of it. We're going to actually want to set some goals. A while back I read a book by Henry Blackaby and Richard Blackaby. Together they wrote this, and they talked about leadership. And they said leadership is taking people from where they are to where God wants them to be. We actually, I could never get away from this statement, and we actually made this the mission statement of our church. We said our church is here to take you from where you are to where God wants you to be. So we just personalized it. And it comes from this book by the Blackabys on leadership, on spiritual leadership, to take people from where they are to where they want to be. So when you apply this to your church is where you are. Your church is where it is financially. It is where it is. There is a dot on the map that says current location. Just like your church, if you have a building or you meet in a rented space, there is a dot on a map that says here's where the church meets. Well, there is a dot on a financial map that says here's where we are financially. And so in order to set goals, you've got to do two things. The first thing you have to do is you have to decide where you are, because you can't go where you want to go until you understand where you are. And what I've realized in talking to pastors who are often visionary and they have this great purpose and this great sense of calling is sometimes we don't live in reality. and we don't have a firm grasp on the numbers. And so balance sheets and profit and loss statements and accountants and all that stuff, it scares us because we don't understand it. And we're going to try to make that simple for you. But you've got to understand, where is your church financially? Where are you right now? Exactly how many people are giving to your church? Not just what's your budget. How is it funded? Where's the money coming from? Where's the money going? I mean, we've got to have an understanding of where we are financially. So when we talk about setting goals, your first homework assignment, your first action step, and this is a time where you can pause the course and do this, okay? Don't just listen and say, yeah, somebody should do it. No, do it. Is to perform an internal financial audit. Now, that sounds miserable. That sounds like going to the doctor and having bad things happen. That's not the kind of audit I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the IRS. I'm not talking about hiring an auditing company and getting accredited. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about looking at where you are. Where is our church right now? What are the facts? What are our financial facts? Because if we don't know our financial facts, we're going to set goals that are stupid. If we don't know where we are right now, we're not going to be able to ever get where we want to go. And so let's perform an internal financial audit. So I'm giving you a resource, Excel spreadsheet called a weekly report, and you can start with this. Now, is it going to have everything you can possibly know? Of course not. And you can make it more in depth if you want, but at least start here. And you've got to do what Jim Collins says. He says, confront the brutal facts. I mean, what is your giving? What percent is coming in online? What percent is coming in recurring? How many giving units? Okay, that's kind of a very bad way to say how many supporters are there. I remember when I looked at this the one time, I was shocked to see how actually few people funded all the ministry in our church. That the majority of our ministry happened because of a handful of people, and some of whom I didn't even know. And I realized that wasn't being a good leader. That was putting, our strategy was hope. But in order for us to chart a course going forward, to set some goals, the first thing we're going to do is pull up this weekly report and go, where are we right now? Now, once you have that, then you can answer the question, okay, where do we want to go? And I want you to set 3 to 5 church-wide financial goals. And I want to talk about this because it's important. When we're talking about setting financial goals, I'm not talking about your finance team setting goals. I'm talking about your staff, your leaders. You don't have to preach sermons on this stuff, but I'm saying that all the leaders in your church should all have a part in 3 to 5 church-wide financial goals. Your youth pastor needs to know these church-wide financial goals. Your women's ministry leaders need to know these church-wide financial goals. These are not accounting, spreadsheet, Excel-loving goals. This is like, here's what our church is trying to do financially. Because financial ministry is connected to actual ministry. Because stewardship is connected to discipleship. Because the youth pastor and the women's ministry leader and the worship team all need to know what the heck is going on in the church financially so that their ministries don't become expenses, so that their ministries actually become part of the entire church operations. And so your church collectively your leaders need 3 to 5 church-wide financial goals that are actually going to push your church forward and enable you to do ministry. Some of the reasons that churches struggle financially is because there are no financial goals. Hope becomes our strategy. And we need to have hope, but it's a bad strategy. And so church-wide financial goals. Let me give you some examples of what some of these could be. Okay? Increase regular giving by 20%. That is a goal that every single staff member in your church, every single key volunteer, every board member, deacon, elder should care about, because that affects everything. Increase regular giving by 20%. When your student pastor knows that this is a goal and that he or she has a part in it, it should affect some of what happens in student ministry. We should be talking to students about money, not just asking a handful of people to fund all the student ministry. Here's another potential goal. Increase digital giving by 50%. We're going to talk about this in just a few minutes. But if you can get people to give, not just online, but give automated contributions online. So the way I give to my church, I go to North Point, and the way that when I'm not speaking somewhere or working somewhere, our family is at North Point, and we're there consistently throughout the year, and we financially give to North Point. But I don't take a check, and I don't put anything in the bucket when it comes by on Sunday. We give online, and we give automatically, meaning every month amount of money comes out of our checking account and goes to North Point through a service that they use. And so that is a huge win for every church, any church that has that, because if I'm not there, I can still give. If I forget to give, I can still give because it's automated, it's recurring, and it happens all the time. It helps them plan, it helps them budget, and they ask me to give that way, so I give that way. And so increasing your digital giving by 50% is a great goal. Having 50% of your contributions come in through recurring methods is a great goal. Here's another one. Take 100 people through Financial Peace University. Now, this can involve all ministry. You can have men's ministry, women's ministry, even student ministry can get involved in this. Because here's what I know. If 100 people go through Financial Peace University or some other type of financial curriculum, and there's lots of good ones. If you take people through that, it will help the church. But 100 people aren't going to go through it by accident. It's going to require an intentional focus. Okay, here's some other words. Communicate expectations to leaders. I've talked to many churches who say, man, our leaders don't give. We have staff that doesn't give. And so going back to all your staff, you can't come into a staff meeting and say, hey guys, new rule. If you're not giving at least 10%, you're fired. You shouldn't do that. But you can communicate those expectations, and you can get people there, and you can say, hey, we're going to have some giving standards among leaders, and we're going to be willing to have some conversations if expectations are not being met. But there's a lot of churches that would do really well to just communicate expectations to leaders. If you've got deacons and elders who are not giving and financially supporting the church, your church will struggle financially, period. End of sentence, full stop, right? What about reach new givers? Are there people in your church who don't give anything? What if you made a goal over the next year to say, we want to engage 25 new givers? Would that affect your communication? Sure it would. What about give away $100,000? I mean, what if that was a goal? What if that was a church-wide financial goal, and your leaders and your people in your church knew, hey, our goal is not just to get money and keep it. Our goal is to give it away. And so we're setting a real goal that has a dollar amount attached to it so we can measure it and talk about how we're doing. And so your church needs goals. You need to set 3 to 5 goals. Okay, so I gave you 6 examples. I wouldn't pick all of these. Maybe you just want to have one. But I think 3 to 5 is more than 5 is too many, that your team can work on throughout all ministries, and that's the key. All ministries need to be involved. If you have financial goals that do not excite the youth ministry, the kids ministry, if everybody cannot equally be on board, then it's the wrong goal, okay? And so set church-wide financial goals that have real numbers that you can talk about through the year that say, how are we doing, how are we doing, how are we doing? And that when you accomplish it, you can check it off and celebrate. And so one pro tip I want to give you, if you want your team involved to help you reach the goals, involve your team in setting the goals. You can't set because you watch a video and go, hey, we're going to, get 50% of our giving coming in online, and write that on a piece of paper and just send it out to somebody and say, go do this. It's not going to work because very few people are fired up and excited about goals that are handed to them. But if you involve people in setting the goals prayerfully, intentionally, to get around and say, hey, what does God want to do in our church? Let's all pray about this. Think about it. And then we're going to get together and talk about it. If you involve people in setting the goals, they're going to be intrinsically motivated to reach the goal. And then when you have accountability conversations, they're not weird because we're actually holding each other accountable to what we said we were going to do. And this is a leadership principle, not even just a financial principle. Involve people in the decision-making process, and they'll be more bought into the decision-making process. If you just hand them a thing and say, hey, here's your job description, here's your goals, here's how to do it, here's what to do, I mean, there's going to be weak commitment. But if you involve them in setting the goals, then it will make a big difference. So, number one, the first thing is you're going to decide that this is important. Hey, our church being fully funded, it's important to all of us. We're going to focus on this. It's going to be in our meetings. It's going to be talked about. We're bringing it to the front because it's part of discipleship. Number two, we're going to set some real goals because we're not just going to say it's important and then go about business as usual. We're going to set real goals that we're all going to know what they are, and we're going to measure them and we're going to look at them. And then number three is the secret sauce, is choose a champion. Choose a champion. In order for your church to reach those financial goals, those goals need a champion. Because here's what I found, and I've seen it time and time again in my own life, in my own church, and even in my own business, and in my family, right? Somebody usually means nobody. Like, even in my family, when there's 5 of us in our family. We have 3 kids. My wife and I have 3 kids and a dog. And chickens. We have chickens in our backyard. And so, but we have 5 human beings that live in our house. And when I say things like, hey, someone should really take this thing of laundry down to the laundry room. That means nobody's going to take it, because when I say somebody, the other 4 people in my family think I'm doing it. And when I say somebody, I'm thinking 4 other people, not me. And when the oldest kid hears somebody, they think mom or younger brother's going to do it. Because for a group of 5 people to hear somebody, we all assume somebody else is going to do it. It's like when I get an email and I see that 4 people got the email, I immediately assume the other 3 people are going to do this, and I just hit delete. Because there's other people involved. Somebody usually means nobody's going to do it. But champions say, I'm going to do it. A champion of something says, this is my job. I own the outcome for this. It's going to get done because I'm going to do it. And I'm either going to do it or I'm going to make sure it gets done. Put this on me. And so your financial goals in your church, they don't need somebody to do it. They need a champion to do it. They need a person, a point leader, a directional leader who says, this is my job. I'm going to own the outcome. If this wins, it will be because, I'm championing it. If it fails, blame me. Every financial goal in your church needs an outcome, just like every ministry in your church needs a champion. Every financial goal in your church needs a champion to lead to an outcome, just like every ministry does. Your women's ministry needs to say, hey, put it on me. Every ministry needs a champion, and every financial goal in your church needs a champion. So champions say, hey, I want to be involved in affecting this change. I want to make this happen. I'm going to talk about who the champion should be next. But champions also fight excuses. I know there are a lot of reasons your church can't be fully funded. I know there's been, listen, we can talk about the economy. We can talk about your area. We can talk about your denomination. We can talk about whether your church is too young, whether your church is too old. I've had people say our church is broke because we're reaching new people that don't know they're supposed to give. I've had pastors email and say, hey, we don't have any money because we're living in a poor area, because we're in the inner city, because we're in the country, because we're in the most expensive part of it. Listen, we all have all kinds of reasons / excuses, and you can tell me it's a reason, and I can say it's an excuse, and back and forth. But here's the deal. Champions fight through all that. They say, despite whatever circumstances we've got, I'm going to own this. They do not make excuses. They fight excuses. And so when you talk about having a champion who's going to help your church financially, here's the deal. You can have a lot of people involved, but someone needs to be in charge. Okay? This can't be a committee. This cannot be a committee. A committee is not going to do this. It needs to be, listen, here's 3 people it can be. It can be the senior pastor. It could be another staff member, like an executive pastor or just another staff member. It can be a chairman of a committee or a high-capacity volunteer. But the bottom line is, it's not a group of people. A group of people can be involved. You can have a lot of people involved. Okay, a great champion is not going to do this by themselves. They're going to involve all these other people I just mentioned. But a champion cannot be a committee. It cannot be a task force. It cannot be a group of people. A champion is a person. Now, if you're a senior pastor and you look around and you say, there is nobody else that can do this, guess what? It needs to be you. If you look around and say, hey, there's another staff member that can do it, it can be them. But you're going to have to fight for them to have clarity and probably get something off of their plate so that they can do this. Maybe there's a committee, but the committee needs a chairman, needs a leader. Not a committee, but a leader of the committee. It can be a high-capacity volunteer. I know churches who've appointed somebody to say, hey, you're like our stewardship pastor, and you're a volunteer, but your mission is to increase giving in our church. And they can go through even this kind of training and implement some of the stuff we talk about. So it can be you, it can be a staff member, it can be a person in your church, but they need clarity and they need freedom and they need direction. And it can be a lot of different people. And so you've got to put someone in place. Find the champion. Choose a champion. And so before you start working on projects, before you start doing some of the things that we're going to talk about in points number 4, 5, and 6, and 7, you've got to make sure that somebody's in place, the right people in place to lead them. And so your finance team may be involved, but they can't do it themselves. The person in charge of the finance team can. Your staff together is going to work on it. And I just talked about how your staff needs to buy into the goals. But your staff needs to be led by somebody whose job it is to champion the financial goals that you've set. And it may be you, senior pastor. If you're watching this, it may be you. It may say, for this season, for this year, I put this on me. I want the ball, right? Great leaders say, give me the ball. Pass me the ball. I will run the ball. I will catch the ball. I will throw the ball. They don't try to pass the ball off to somebody else all the time. They say, hey, I'm gonna do it. Give me the ball. I'll shoot it. I'll put it through the basket. And so choose a champion. And so who's the person in your church that's going to be responsible for implementing the stuff that we're about to talk about? And decide that, or this won't happen. Okay. Number 4 is make a plan. Make a plan. And I've seen this time and time and time again. Plans beat goals every time. Plans beat goals every time. And so you don't need a goal to lose weight. That's dumb. You need a plan to lose weight. I mean, if you want to lose weight. I'm saying if you're like CrossFit, perfect health, don't worry about it. But if you want to lose weight, you don't need a goal to lose weight. You need a plan to lose weight, right? If you want to have a better marriage, you don't need a goal to have a better marriage. You need a plan and a counselor and a date night and a calendar, right? Because plans beat goals every time. And so when we talk about goals, like we set some goals earlier, setting those goals are great because you need to know the direction. But every single time, plans will beat goals. Plans trump goals every single time. So churches are great. Sometimes they have great spending plans, which are kind of like goals, right? Here's how we're going to spend the money. We got requisitions and reimbursements and a budget and codes and line items and a stewardship committee to make sure nobody's doing anything wrong. We got checks, we got balances, we got all this kind of stuff. We got all these spending plans. But very rarely do we create a funding plan. And what I'm going to advocate for you to do here is you can have a spending plan. That's great. I mean, you need to have some of those things. That's probably not hurting you right now. What's missing from most churches is what is our plan to actually get the money that we're talking about spending, right? We agonize for months over a budget. How much are we going to spend on this and that and this? And how much does youth camp cost? And why does the projector bowl cost so much? And staff and insurance went up and all this stuff. And we agonize over where the money's going to be spent. What if we put that much time into talking about how the money is going to come in the first place? If we created a funding plan. And so what you need is an annual funding calendar. You need a yearly funding calendar. This is just simply when you're going to do what. This is a plan for looking at the year to go, hey, here's when we're going to do the financial things that we need to do in order to accomplish our goals. Because if you have goals without this, nothing will happen. And so your plan, it goes on a calendar and you say, this is what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. And this is the missing ingredient that most churches have, is we don't have a fundraising plan to tell us when to do what. So let's talk about some things that should go on your funding calendar, okay? What should go on your fundraising plan? All right, money message series. When are you going to preach about money? And this is not, we want to decide this in advance. We do not want to preach on money because last week's offering was low. We want to intentionally talk about money. And if I was creating this for your church, I would look hard at months like February, right when kind of New Year starts. February, people kind of a little bit done with Christmas. They're over the Christmas credit card debt thing, and they're kind of on to like their reality for the year settling in. February is a great time to do a money message series on giving, on stewardship, on financial planning, on personal finances. February is a great time to talk about money. Another time to do it is May. May is a great time to talk about generosity because people are about to go on vacation for the summer. It's a great time to talk about automated giving online. It's a great time to show people how to do that. November, another great time to talk about money because people kind of start to get in the giving mood. They start to kind of get into, donating food and Thanksgiving and Christmas and giving. And so November is a great time to do it. So when you look at your calendar for the next year, when are you going to preach on money? Not just preach on giving, but preach on money. Giving is a part of preaching on money. So when are you doing a series on this? When are you talking about this for 3 or 4 weeks? But also, throughout the year, when can you hit on it? So maybe not a whole message on it, but it's part of a message. Plan this out. When are you going to talk about money? Because it's a stewardship and it's a discipleship issue. It is a heart issue. And so you go on to the days where you can just preach one money message a year and have people commit to the budget. And so you got to consistently educate people on biblical stewardship. And so when are you doing it? Put it on the calendar. Put it on the calendar a few times. Number 2, financial education. This is classes, groups, Dave Ramsey. This is when you do it. My friend Joe Sangle has a great ministry called I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. He's got a group study in there that you can take people through some classes. He actually comes in. He and his team come in and can do a 2-hour. Very fun. It's so fun. I can't believe how fun it is. We used to have Joe come do this multiple times a year. He's been to our church to talk to people about saving and credit cards and what's an IRA and investing and just helping people win with money. Like, when are you doing that in your church? Because if you don't put that on the plan and say, you know what, we're focusing on this, which means we're not going to do that, we're going to do this instead, it's not going to happen. And so this should go on your funding calendar. When are we going to talk about, whether it's a group, whether it's a class, whether it's an event, what are we going to do and when are we going to do it? And we're not going to announce the kickoff of our financial groups on the same day that we're announcing the youth camp and the women's ministry tea and the church work day. I mean, we're carving out space to talk about this and this alone because it's important. And you're not going to do it just by accident. You're going to have to do it according to plan. What about digital giving? I told you that May is a good time to do that. But when are you emphasizing this? I mean, when are you going to shoot a video that shows people, like a screencast, that shows people how to go to your website and set up a donation? Did you know that you should have a video that shows people how to do it, that tells people the website to go to, and that talks about why they should do it? Did you know that it's okay to say, hey, church, we want you to give online and make it recurring because it's just better for us and we're just being honest? Did you know that that's okay to do that? You can't just offer online giving. You have to show people how it works and tell people why to do it and help them do it. And so when are you going to talk about that? May is a great time to do it because it's about to be the summer, and I think you should have a little campaign, a mini campaign every spring right before summer to talk to people about giving online, giving recurring, shoot some videos, send some emails. Have a process in place by which to do it. That should go on your calendar. How about this? How about donor appreciation? When are you saying thanks? Listen, if it's important, put it on the calendar. When are you saying thanks? Can you have a donor appreciation event? Summer's a great time to do this, by the way. You could invite all your donors, maybe not all, maybe if you don't want to invite all, you can invite your key donors or your top donors or whatever. You could figure out who to invite. You're a smart person. But I would absolutely invite your key donors to a donor appreciation event. So if you're doing a big event, maybe you're doing something at the church, you can invite all your donors. And you can include volunteers. I know a church that includes volunteers as well because they don't want to single people out for just financial contributions and not time contributions. But invite all your donors and include volunteers if you want. But bring all your donors to the church. Have dinner. Say thanks. Bring in a guest speaker. Have some entertainment. Have some fun. Tell them what you're doing with the money. Have a donor appreciation event. And the summer is a great time to do it. If you just want to invite key donors, maybe you want to do the big thing. Hey, invite the 10 people over to your house and just have a cookout. You don't have to present a presentation to them or give them a report or show them a slideshow of anything. You just say, hey, listen, you guys give to our church. You ladies give, you families, I'm not just talking guys, you people give to our church, and we just want to say thanks. We couldn't do what we do without you. And so we're just going to have some barbecue. We got some desserts. Y'all just hang out. Let's just enjoy a couple hours together. What a great activity for the summer. That goes a long way to increasing giving in your church, by the way, but it's also just a good thing to do. Appreciate your donors. When's that happening? Put it on your calendar. What about donor communication? This is different. And we'll talk about this is I think all your donors, they need a regular communication. And we'll talk about that. But when are you going to do it? What are you going to send, and when are you going to send it, and how are you going to send it, and when's it going to happen? Who's going to do it? That goes on your yearly funding calendar. What about special offerings? I think every church should have 2 special offerings every year. Not more than 2, not less than 2. I think 2. 2 is the right number, in my opinion. I think you should do one at the end of the year, and I think you can do one other time, around something. And 2 special offerings. If you have like 12 special offerings in your church, none of them are special offerings. But 2 times a year, I think you can do it, and you can do it right. Maybe it's the end of the year. Maybe you're asking to give money to missions or to the community. This is what my church does, is every year they do the same campaign every year, and they ask people to give, and they give away millions of dollars. It's a big church. They give away a lot of money to various things in the community, and it's awesome. And people that aren't even Christians give to it because it's awesome. So you could do something like that, and you could do maybe one other offering a year. I know a church that does one of their 2 special offerings is for their youth camp because their focus is sending just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of high school and high school students to this camp. and it's expensive, and so they raise money to scholarship people, and it's a big, big, big deal in this church because that fits with their strategy, and that's one of their 2 special offerings. And so when are they? What are they? When are they happening? Let's put it on the calendar. When we put stuff on the calendar, and then when we say start planning that, back up from it and put another thing on the calendar that says start planning the special offering, things stop sneaking up on us. And I realize that sneaking up on us is kind of code word for being disorganized. And so put the things that you're going to do to accomplish your financial goals on your calendar. Now, you don't have to do everything, but it's time to change something. Okay? You can argue about the donor appreciation event, and it's not treating people special. You can argue about digital giving and the fees, and you can find problems with all the things I'm suggesting. But if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep having the results you're having. So you don't have to do anything that I'm telling you to do. But if you want to see some different results, it's time to change something. And so make a plan, create an annual calendar that says, here's what we're going to do. Let your champion lead the way, your champion that you chose in step 3, lead the way and make it happen. And put the things that you're actually going to do on the calendar. And then don't do a bunch of other stupid stuff. Just do the stuff that fits in with your plan. Step 5 is use the right tools. If you want to have increased giving in your church, if you want to have a solid, healthy, not just meet the budget, but exceed the budget and do more ministry, then it's time to use the right tools. So when we talk about the tools of the trade, there are tools that get the job done, and there are tools that don't get the job done. There are modern tools, right? If you want to go farm, you can go get a hand, thing to, I don't know what that thing's called, but like the guy in black always carries one, right? To chop down the wheat, right? You can get one of those and chop down wheat, or you can get a combine, which will do a better job. And so based on the size of the job, you need to choose the right tools. So the tools that you use need to make it easy for people to give. Now, this is some of this is best practice common sense stuff, but the easier you make something, the more people will do it. But so many of the systems that we have in church make it complicated for people to do stuff. Like, for example, sending a text message to a phone number is way easier than stopping by a crowded sign-up table and signing up for something. So the tools that we choose and the tools that we use need to make it easy for people to do stuff, because the easier we make it for people on their terms, the easier we make something, the more people will do it. So when you make giving easier, more people will give. When you make signing up easier, more people will sign up. So make giving easy. So let me give you kind of some of just the best tools I think you should use. I'm going to give you 5 tools, and I think you should use these 5 tools in order to receive contributions and donations in your church. The first and most important tool is online giving. You need to have online giving. It is no longer an option. We have got to engage people online, and this is where they are, and this is where they're paying their bills. This is where they're giving. We've got to offer this, but we've got to go beyond offering it, and we've got to emphasizing it. This is the number 1 tool to get right in your church. Online giving. People need to be able to give to your church without setting up an account in under 2 minutes. Now, you may offer them the ability to set up an account, but they need to be able to give to your church in under 2 minutes, quickly and easily, using any method they want. If they want to give via check, they should give via check. If they want to give via debit card, they should give via debit card. If they want to give via credit card, they should be able to give via credit card. And you could say, well, we don't want to take credit cards because we don't believe in credit cards. That's fine, but people use them. People have them. It's the number 1 way that most people spend money. And no one in your church is going to go in debt because they gave too much money to your church with their credit card. It's not going to happen. So engage people online, set up online giving. It needs to happen in under 2 minutes. It needs to happen without an account. Now, you should also allow people to create an account and set up a profile so that they can give regularly. And if the tools that you're using do not allow this, get a different tool. And you can email us and I'll recommend you a couple tools. Will they cost money? They will cost a small amount of money. But they're not expensive. They're not too expensive. If you came to me and said, hey, Michael, I will give you $100 right now, but you have to give me $3 back. Will you take that deal? I would say yes, because I will have $97 more than I would have otherwise. And so don't let us shop the fees. Be a good steward, but don't let the fact that something costs money keep you from receiving much, much, much more in the process. And so you need online giving, and your online giving solution, it needs to allow people to give quickly, and it needs to allow them to set up automated accounts, and it needs to allow them to give however they want to give. And so if you can't do those three things, you need a different tool, and I'll help you find the right one. So that's one tool. Number two is some type of kiosk or app giving. And so whether you have a kiosk in the lobby, whether people can go up and swipe a credit card or type in their number, type in their information, you need to have some type of giving station either in the lobby or on the app. And so if people have a smartphone, they have a kiosk in their pocket. But you can also put an actual kiosk. It could be an iPad kiosk. You don't have to get something that looks like an ATM. You can get an iPad giving station where people can go up and give. And a lot of times those kiosks will double as registration kiosks for different events, but they're quick and they're easy, and it's something that you should look at. Because this is how people are giving today. And everybody's not going to give that way, but a lot of people will give that way. As a just kind of a bonus, if you don't currently offer a kiosk, if you were to offer that, you would receive a lot of new contributions from new people who just want to try it out. And it's a great way to get people in the habit of giving. Number three, offering envelopes. I'm a big believer in offering envelopes. I like online, I like kiosks, I like digital, I like computers, I like the whole deal. But offering envelopes still work. And there are a lot of people in your church that they want to participate in the act of giving at church. That's not old school. Some people say that's old school, and it is old school, but it's also just a preference for people. And it has nothing to do with being old or new. It's just some people prefer to do that. So offer them envelopes. Provide a way for them to give with an offering envelope. And there's some cool things you can do on offering envelope to where you can even have people share their bank information and give via a virtual check on an offering envelope that's sealed up so that stuff's not visible on the outside. And so there's a ways to do it. So if you're not using offering envelopes, it's something to look at, something to consider. Here's some other tools. Number 4, mobile giving. Mobile giving. Can people give from their phones? If you're taking them to a page on your website that is not mobile friendly and is complicated and it's really small and they have to type in all this crazy stuff from their phone, it's not going to work. And so mobile giving, I could share the stats with you right now, but by the time you watch it, it'll be different because it's changing so fast. This is not the future, and this is now the present. And so people are doing this stuff from their phones, and so can they give? In fact, when you're talking about giving in your church service, you can say, hey, you can pass the bucket or you can take out your phone right now and give people directions for how to give using their phone. If you don't have that option, you can get that option. That is a tool. It's like saying, hey, we've got this field that needs to be harvested, but we don't have any tools with which to do it. Okay? Get the tools. The mobile giving tools will help. Number 5 is planned giving. This is huge. This is huge. Did you know there are people in your church right now that they would be willing to update their wills, that they would be willing to give from a sale of a business, that they will be in the next 5 years that something's gonna happen in their life financially that will be a blessing and could be a big blessing to your church. And so there needs to be some type of system by which you can educate and communicate. There are people that want to give stocks, non-cash gifts, that want to put this into their system, but it's going to require some foresight on your part. And so again, your fully funded, your champion, the champion that you have in your church that's responsible for helping your church be fully funded, they can help with some of these things and lead the way on some of these things. So planned giving is a huge thing. Now, again, when you create a new way to give, that usually reaches new givers. And so find the right tools, use the right tools, and deploy them appropriately and make it easy for people to give. So not only do you need to put all this stuff on the calendar, but you need to look at the tools you're using to actually receive contributions and go, are we using the right tools? Maybe a change needs to be made here. And I'd be happy to recommend and put you in touch with some people who can help with these tools. So number 6, it's time to ask for money. Ask for money. If you want to have a church that not just meets the budget, but kind of moves beyond that and facilitates ministry, you've got to ask for money. So I've seen 2 kinds of mentality when it comes to this. There's the beggar mentality and there's the broke mentality. The beggar mentality is like, oh, I'm standing up and I'm preaching on money, and it's like I'm just begging people because we need to do this and we need to do this, and isn't this important, and shouldn't you want to do this, and all this stuff that's going on. Beggar, right? Beggar mentality. And then there's the broke mentality, and these are often related. There's the broke mentality. These are the churches that are always looking for the cheapest option, regardless of whether it's effective or not. It's just like if it's cheap, it's good enough for us. The broke mentality. And these two are related. And I don't want your church to have a beggar mentality. I want your church to have an abundance mentality, because that's how God treats us. He is abundant in love and grace and mercy and generosity. He gave his son, right? And so I'm not talking about a get-rich mentality. I'm talking about an abundance mentality, that we can have enough, that we can do what God wants us to do. And I don't want you to have a broke mentality, always walking around, woe is me. Oh, the economy. Oh, we can't afford to pay people. Oh, can somebody donate this? I mean, it is exhausting being around any organization that has a broke mentality, to where they're always, where it's the woe is me. And we've got to overcome that. And some of the reasons we adopt some of these mentalities are actually good, because we don't want to offend people, because we don't want people to think the church is all about the money, because we don't want to guilt people. And those are actually good motivations that sometimes lead us to bad decisions. But unchurched people are not dumb. Unchurched people are not dumb. They know it takes money to run a church. And so what we try to do is we just let people know that they can give. We create awareness. But awareness is actually the enemy of action. And I don't want you just to make awareness for generosity. I want you to actually ask people to give. I don't want you just to inform people that there's an offering. I want you to ask people to participate. And so when we're talking about asking for money, I'm not talking about hinting. I'm not talking about suggesting. I'm talking about asking people, not with guilt, not with a spirit of hatred even, not with the spirit of entitlement, but with a spirit of clarity. Not to hint, clarity is actually kind. That's what I've realized, that clarity is kind. When you create clarity for people, maybe they're on your staff, you say, listen, let me just break down your job for you in simplest things. You got all these things that you're doing, but this is what's most important. That's actually kind to them. Clarity is kind. And when you go to your church and you say, hey, we're about to receive an offering, and here's what we're going to do with it, and here's why we need it, and here's why I want to ask you to participate, that is kind. Clarity is kind. And so don't hint, don't suggest, don't even offer, but ask people to participate. Just hinting around it, just dancing around it, that's the beggar broke mentality. And so I don't want you to do that. I want you to be kind. And so create a communication plan that feels right for your church, for your culture, and then stick to the plan. So let's talk about just some ways you can do this. I think you can actually talk about money every week in your church. You go, what? Yes, you can talk about money every week in your church by setting up the offering each week. It's simple. Setting up the offering each week. Now, there's a if you have an offering in your church, and even if you have boxes in the back, I think it's terrible to have boxes in the back for people to put money in it and not explain what they are. That's not kind. That's not friendly to guests. That there's weird boxes and that people are sticking stuff in. That's weird if you don't explain it. But passing a plate or a bucket around without explaining and asking people what to do, that's weird. So what you can do is you can talk about money every week when you set up the offering, by just setting up the offering every week. A while back, you could tell this was a few years ago because I'm wearing this like Dracula shirt. I came out during the service, and after some worship, you can see the band still up on the stage, and so there's some music playing in the background. They just finished singing, and I smoothly transitioned right from worship through singing to worship through giving. And I came out and I brought this Monopoly game, and I talked about Monopoly for a couple minutes. I talked about how I loved to play this game as a kid, how I love to play it, and you go and you know the deal behind Monopoly is that you buy properties, you put hotels, you put houses, you try to bankrupt everybody, you try to get all the money, right? But when the game's over, what do? Because it's fake money. You take all the Monopoly money, you take all the pieces, you take the thimble and the car and the get out of jail free cards, and you put it all back in the box, and you pull it up and you put the game away, and the game's over. And I compared that to life, that we go through life amassing possessions and cars and houses and stuff, and but when it's all over, it all goes back in the box. And then I just challenge people to say, hey, listen, there's something you can do with your money that's not like Monopoly at all, that you can actually do something with your money that makes an eternal difference. And I just explained the offering. Took a couple minutes, explained what was about to happen, told people we're about to pass the plates, you could participate, and what you put in here is not going to go back in the box, it's going to go out into the community, and it's going to make a difference. And we called these our offering moments. And we would say, hey, listen, we're going to do this every time. And we're going to find an interesting and unique and meaningful way to talk about money in a way that is not guilt, laying on the guilt, in a way that is not woe is me, in a way that's not like, but in a way that's clear, interesting and clear, because clarity is kind, and we wanted to compel people to give. And so I would just ask people to give. And so I think you could do this every week with just a little bit of planning. I mean, you plan the songs, you plan the sermon, so why not plan what you're going to say right as you receive the offering? It's kind. So here's the deal. A good offering talk has three things. A compelling hook. And so I used the Monopoly thing to kind of launch into it. There was something interesting. I didn't just come out and say, well, now it's time to give, and so this is what we're going to do. No, there was something there. There was something there. There were clear directions. I told people, we're about to pass some buckets down the aisles, and if you want to put in a contribution, you can. You can also go to our website and do it on our website, and now would be a great time to do it. So there were clear directions. I told people what was about to happen. So we don't just let the worship leader just mumble through some stuff and then all of a sudden start passing the plates. We gave people clear directions because clarity is kind. And then we had a straightforward ask. I would just ask, say, hey, we'd love for you to participate. If you're here today and you can give, we'd love for you to give because here's what we're going to do with it. And we had a straightforward ask. So I think every week you have the opportunity to talk about money through an offering talk that has these things to it. Now, there's all different kinds of ways you can do it, and I want to give you a few. Number one of my favorite is here's why I give. You could have a staff member, a volunteer, or another person do this. Just get up and say, hey, in just a few minutes, we're about to receive an offering. We're going to pass the plates, and I want to ask you to give. But I give. I give at this church. I'm not even on staff here, but I'm a volunteer, and I give, and here's why I give. It's just almost like a little testimony. And you could have them write it out. You can have them practice it in advance, and it doesn't have to be rambling. But it doesn't also have to be like, hey, I give because one time I gave and I won the lottery. It doesn't have to be this dramatic thing either. It can just be like, hey, I'm a regular person. I have a regular job, and I give, and I love to give, and so let's pray. And that's a great way to set up the offering. Here's another way, 6 other services. I love this. I said, hey, I don't know if you realize, I did this one time. I said, hey, I don't know if you realize this or not, but right now while we're in here in church, did you know there are 6 other church services going on in our building right now? We have a service for preschoolers. We have a service for elementary students. And I went through some of our kids' environments. And I said that there were kids learning about Jesus, some for the very first time. And when you give, it's not just paying to have the lights on and the air conditioning on in this service, but there's actually 6 other services. And so for everybody that gives, thank you. And I thanked everybody. And I said, if you want to support that, you can give right now too. 6 other services. That's a great angle. Where a dollar goes. This is probably one of my favorite. I came out one time and I got this idea from Long Hollow Baptist Church. They had a graphic and it showed where the dollar went. And it was the graphic was like divided up in different colors. And so I did that in person one time. I came out and I held up a dollar bill. I said, this is a dollar. In just a minute, many of you are going to give many of these. And I just wanted you to know what happens to it after you give it. I mean, it just goes away into the back room, and what happens next? And I just walked people through a very simple description. I said, hey, so many cents of this dollar goes to pay our staff. Aren't you glad we have a staff? I mean, we have a great staff. It's a really great staff. We're so thankful for them. Hey, certain percentages goes to our building. Aren't you glad we're indoors? I mean, it's hot outside. There's air conditioning. And I just walked people through 4 categories of where kind of the money went, and just let them know. And I had some business people come up to me afterwards and say that was the best description of what happens to the money at the church that I've ever heard, and it actually gave them confidence to give. And you don't have to give the specifics. You don't have to say this staff member makes this much. That's really not what most people want to know. I mean, some crazy people want to know those things, but just basically saying here's what happens with the money that you give was an incredible and compelling reason for people to give. One last thing I would say is don't say we don't want you to give. I've been in some churches where they say, hey, if you're a guest with us today, we don't want you to give. The service is a gift to you. And I used to say that actually until somebody called me on it, and then I quit saying it because here's the deal, that's a lie. I do want people to give. Why do I want them to give? Number one, because it's good for them. Generosity is good for a human soul, whether you're a Christian or not. I mean, when you give, it's just a good thing to give. And so I do want people to give. Secondly, I wanted people to give to our church because I knew we had an important mission and stuff to do and a team and a building and a ministry and all that, and I didn't want people to give. And if a very, very wealthy billionaire was a guest at our church, I would want them to give. So I stopped saying, I don't want you to give, because that's a lie, and I did want people to give. And I tweaked it to say, if you're a guest with us, you don't feel obligated to give, but you certainly can participate in the offering, and we think it's a great thing for everybody. And I think that was a much more intellectually honest way to say that. But here's the deal. Because we knew money was important, we knew we had to talk about money. And so we were just going to ask for money. We were going to, not with the beggar mentality and not with the broke mentality, but with clarity. We were going to ask people to participate because we believed in what we were doing. And so I would encourage you to do the same thing. If your church is doing important ministry, clearly ask people to give in a compelling, in an interesting, and a creative way. The second thing I would do every week is I would say thanks. Not only would I ask for money every Sunday, I would say thanks every week. What would happen if every Thursday you turned it into Thank You Thursday and you thanked people who gave for the first time that last week? So if somebody gave for the very first time, well, imagine what would happen if you sent them a thank you note on Thursday that just said, hey, I just saw that you gave. You don't have to say the amount even, but say, it just came to my attention that you gave. Thank you so much. I mean, a handwritten thank you note, a text message, just something that just say, hey, thank you. Just say thanks. It's not enough to feel thankful. We actually have to say thanks. And so thank people every week. And those are two things I think you can do every week. Clearly ask through the offering time, and then say thanks every week to people who give. Every week. Second thing is quarterly. Talking about your communication plan, you can ask for money quarterly. And a few things I would do quarterly. First of all, I would communicate with all your donors. With all your donors, to communicate with your donors. The people who give money to your church, they need to hear from you, especially. Not just the generic church newsletter, not just the generic church email, but as a donor. So at least quarterly, I would send them something in the mail or via email, and I would try to do it via mail instead of email. Send them something in the mail that is a story of what you're doing with their money. Now, I know it's all God's money and all that, but these people are giving money that they could do anything with. They could spend it on themselves or they could give it to somebody else, but they've chosen to give it to your church. It is only right, but it is also very helpful to tell them what's going on, to send some type of donor-focused communication, to tell stories of what positive things are happening in the church because of their contributions. I read a blog post recently from a business person who was funding a missionary, and this mission agency kept asking for money, and every time they would have a need, they would come back and ask for money. They didn't get a whole lot of other communication, but this missions agency and this person, it wasn't gaining traction. Like, it wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And finally, this business person said, you know what? I am tired of getting asked for money over and over and over again for something that's not working. And they used this phrase. They said, I'm tired of being asked to lose money for Jesus. And so part of the problem was that there wasn't a good strategy there to take those donations and do something positive. There wasn't traction. It wasn't working. And that's a problem. If your church isn't working right, you're going to have a funding problem. But the other issue was they were only being asked for stuff. There was never any updates as to what positive things we're making. And so with your donors, you need to communicate with them all positively. It can be a letter. It can be pictures. It can be stories. I know churches that send little magnets with a mission statement on it, or a picture of somebody maybe being baptized with just a note that says, hey, you helped make this possible. I mean, celebrate and communicate with your donors at least on a quarterly basis. I think you could send them giving statements more than once a year. Say, hey, here's how much you've given so far. Thanks so much. We appreciate you. We love you, and we're grateful for you. So communicate with all your donors. Here's some ideas. You could send a video from the pastor. It does not need to be fancy. Take out an iPhone or open up the computer and just talk for 3 minutes and just thank them. You could share a monthly report. Here's how many people came to our church. Here's how many kids were here. Just share some numbers. When you share some numbers with your donors, it actually increases their confidence in your ability to lead and the church's ability to lead well. And they know that you're not asking them to waste money for Jesus. Okay? Pictures and stories. This is huge. Share a story. When something good happens, send it to your donors and say, hey, you helped make this happen. Even if they weren't directly involved with it, they will love knowing what's going on. And this is something you should do at least quarterly. What about yearly? What could you do yearly? Well, I think you need to do your money message series. We talked about that when we talked about planning. You need to do that every year. Preach on money, not just giving. Giving's a part of it, but money, stewardship, every single year. Like probably maybe even more than once. At least you need to hit it a few other times, but preach a focused money message series every year. I think you do a special offering. Every single year. You can ask for money when you do a special offering. You will pick up a lot of new people who don't give regularly to the budget, but they'll give to a special cause. And this is something you can do every single year. And then you need to do your annual contribution statements and annual report every year. So there are three things you can do once a year to really keep money, to keep generosity, to keep giving in front of people. And you put these on your calendar and you create scheduled times where you can talk about money. And you just make it a part of your rhythm, of your weekly flow. And then number 7 is this: celebrate wins. Celebrate wins. Now, there's a practical principle here that you get more of what you appreciate. I mean, when you appreciate and call out something and, recognize it, what you celebrate, what gets celebrated gets repeated. What gets appreciated gets repeated. There's lots of different ways to say this. But you just kind of get more of what you appreciate. But then there's a deeper principle, is it's just the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. So spend just as much time celebrating as you do promoting. People often ask me what I would do differently if I was leading a church and go back and do it again. And there's a lot of things. But one of the things is I think because I'm so vision oriented, I tend to focus on what's next. And something awesome will happen and I'll be like, great, let's move on. What's next? And I think a better plan is to spend just as much time celebrating something as you do promoting. Let's make it practical. If you do Vacation Bible School in the summer and you spend 3 weeks promoting the heck out of it, I think you should take the next 3 weeks sharing success stories and testimonies of volunteers and kids and families and debriefing and letting people breathe before moving on to the next thing. So as much time as you spend asking for money, I think we should spend celebrating that money was given and great stuff was done with it. Appreciate people individually and celebrate people collectively. So when it comes to appreciating people, you need to not just say thanks to the whole church. Say thanks individually. This is why I'm a huge advocate of the thank you note. And here's some thank you notes. We're giving you the files. But thank people for serving individually when they volunteer. Thank you for volunteering. When you get wind that somebody invited somebody, you should send them a thank you note that says thank you for inviting. Hey, I understood you invited Bill and he came to church this last week. Thanks so much for inviting Bill. Incredible amount of trust. And you are our mission personified because you invited Bill to come to church. Sign your name. That's huge. That person's going to put that card up on their refrigerator for 2 weeks. And then thank you for giving. When somebody gives money for the first time, when somebody gives an unusual gift, when somebody gives sacrificially, send them a thank you card in the mail. Put a stamp on it and mail it. Not an email, not a form letter, but a thank you. Write it for 2 minutes. It will make a difference. I went into a bakery the other day, and this bakery had a wall up with all the thank you cards that they had received from various schools and nonprofits. Hey, such and such elementary school wants to thank you for donating, 50 bagels to the breakfast. You're great. And this business had put up all the thank you cards. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, they're turning appreciation into advertisement. But here's the deal. Those thank you notes meant so much to them that they felt compelled to make a bulletin board right by the restroom and tack them up somewhere. That the thank you notes they received are now becoming advertisements for them. and people, when you send thank you notes to people in your church, they're going to put them on their fireplace mantles, on their refrigerator. They're not just going to throw it away with the junk mail. That stuff is heartfelt and it makes a huge difference. And so celebrate people individually, not just collectively. Appreciate people individually and then celebrate them collectively. So I've given you the files for these. We've got printed copies if you want to order them as well. But these make great great tools to thank people for giving. So appreciate individually, but celebrate collectively. So let your leaders and your volunteers and all your people know how things are going. Let them know what's happening in the church. And all of this together becomes part of a fundraising system. When you create a plan, when you ask for money, when you celebrate, it becomes part of a good, healthy financial system by which your church can have a budget that's not just like, you're not just meeting budget, but you're exceeding budget. And then you're not even just exceeding budget, but you're deploying ministry out into the community. That's what we want for your church. And all this can happen when you take this systems approach to generosity and talking about money. So that's 7 steps, a lot of training here. Slow down, go back through this, watch it with the person that you appoint as your champion, watch it with your staff, talk about where you can improve, create your plan, work on the resources, and let's build a healthy stewardship system in your church.